Was a tale of two Irelands. On the one hand, the Ireland of the highly paid and the rich, in this case the top 1% of civil servants, those on €150,000 or more. The government was out across the media justifying pay increases of €15,000, €20,000, €30,000 or more for some of the highest earners in the country. Secretaries General of government departments will get a raise of almost €40,000, bringing their total up to €250,000 a year. A total annual cost of these increases of €60 million. But on the other hand, the government had a very different message for low and middle income workers. No immediate pay increase in July. No, we have to do something about it because legally we're bound. No. The message to the low and middle income workers is sorry, you'll have to wait. There'll be no action until the budget. To public sector workers, an insulting pay offer, which amounts to 3.5% in a year when inflation is now at 8%. In other words, asking workers to sign up for a significant pay cut. The SRI warns this morning that Irish households are facing the biggest drop in living standards since the 2008 crisis. But the government continues to say it can do precious little. That is a political choice. A different choice is entirely possible. The government says it's bound by the 2017 legislation. That's legislation which, by the way, People Before Profit voted against. But it can bring in new legislation. Next Tuesday, next Wednesday, next Thursday, to say there continues to be a financial emergency for ordinary people in this country, for the 1 in 3 people who are living in energy poverty, and we're not going to, at this moment, pay the already well-paid even more. Workers, public and private sector, need a pay rise. If they don't get a rise equal to or higher than the rate of inflation, they're going to experience a cut in their living standards. There is a reason that Mick Lynch, the leader of the RMT union in Britain, has become such a popular figure, including in this country. Now, not only is he unflappable in the face of ridiculous right-wing media questioning, but he represents the fact that when workers are struggling, they look at the fact that when workers get organised, actually they have power. And that's what we need to see here to see wage increases won. Instead of massive pay increases for the top 1%, the government needs to take action now to protect low and middle income workers from the cost of living and housing crisis. We need price controls on essential goods to stop the spiralling costs. We need wage increases at least equal to the rate of inflation for public and private sector workers. We need to raise the minimum wage immediately to raise the wage floor for all. Taoiseach, would you prioritise low and middle income workers instead of the highest paid?
Thank you, Deputy. Taoiseach.
Deputy, I think what you described there was quite simply a misrepresentation of the facts and doesn't describe what's happening on the 1st of July. And for people who are interested in the facts, and I know most people are genuinely interested in the facts, I'm going to set out the facts. First of all, this is not a pay increase. It's pay restoration. It's the reversal of pay cuts that happened over 10 years ago. And what happened 10, 12 years ago is there are pay cuts across the board in the public sector, and those in the highest salaries had the deepest pay cuts for the longest period of time. And this is the last group who are seeing their pay restored. So it's not a pay increase. It's the reversal of a pay cut and pay restoration. And if it was any other group, that's how you would describe it. You said they were civil servants. Again, that's not factually correct. 90% are doctors. They're public servants. They're hospitals working they're doctors working in our public hospital system. So if I went with you into a hospital today, let's say one of the maternity hospitals around the state, the only person who hasn't had their pay restored is the person who did the C-section at 4 a.m. last night. If I went with you today into one of the busy emergency departments in any of our public hospitals in Ireland, the only person who hasn't had their pay restored is the consultant doing the rounds, trying to get patients off trolleys and into beds. And if I went with you into Crumlin Children's Hospital just down the road from here, and we went into the orthopaedic operating theatre, the only person in that theatre who hasn't had their pay restored is the person doing the scoliosis operation. And these are people who are hard to recruit, and hard to retain and are well sought after around the world. And they're the last people to have their pay restored. And that's what's happening. And the way you tried to represent it was simply non-factual. In relation to the wider issue of public sector pay, the government believes that all public servants deserve a pay increase. We've already agreed a pay increase of between 2% and 3% this year, plus or minus an increment, and we accept that that is not enough given the cost of living. And that is why we're engaging with public sector unions on an agreement for a better pay increase than that, not just this year, but also next year. But as the unions rightly point out, there are 3 elements to this. It's not just about how much you're paid, it's about how much you get to take home after tax and how far that money goes, which they call the social wage. And I believe the space is there for an agreement if we take into account those 3 aspects of it.
Thank you, Taoiseach. Deputy Murphy.
Thanks. When is a pay increase not a pay increase? What, when you're on over 150,000 euros? I mean, the Secretaries General of the departments that you lead, last year were taking home 210,000 euros in a year. This year, or the next 12 months, will take home 250,000 euros in a year. In anybody's money, that's a pretty significant pay increase year on year. In terms of the points about the hospitals, the truth is that if we want to attract and retain health professionals, what we need to do is have pay equality in the health service. We need to not overwork in an overly pressurised situation of our currently underfunded health service. We need to tackle the housing crisis and then get people to come and work in a national health service. That's the answer. That's what the studies show. People don't need to be on 250,000 euros to do a job in our health service. People want to work in our health service if they feel they're contributing to a real public health service. But the question again for the Taoiseach is you're moving immediately to increase the pay of the highest earners, but you're saying to ordinary people that they have to wait. They cannot wait, Taoiseach. Thousands of people were out on the streets last Saturday. Tens of thousands of people will be out if you don't move now in terms of pay increases for ordinary workers, price controls to stop the cost of living and housing crisis.
Thank you, Taoiseach.
Yeah, thanks, Deputy. To answer your question, a pay increase is not a pay increase when in 2022 you end up earning the same as you did in 2012. It's the reversal of a pay cut. It's pay restoration. Those are the facts. You may choose to misrepresent them, but those are the facts. I heard you speaking on the radio yesterday, and one thing I have to say is I do actually respect your sincerity, that you are a person who believes in an ideology, socialism. I respect that. But there are 2 things you said that I think are totally wrong. One, price controls. We know the world over what happens when you introduce price controls. You end up with a supply problem and you end up with rationing. And that's what happened in the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe and other places when they tried it. And I heard you saying that you think we should have a maximum wage, that nobody should earn more than 150,000 euros a year. And that's fair enough, that's your view. But I disagree with that view. If you do that, there will be a brain drain of talent from the state. That's what happens in socialist countries around the world when they attempt this. And you will see investment from multinationals, FDI, dying off, perhaps leaving. And then the cake will get smaller, there'll be less for everyone. And that is what happens when socialism is actually attempted in the genuine, sincere way that you would try to do it.